Yeah, so if we just jump straight onto the agenda to see what we're going to cover today. So first we'll give you an introduction to the web client and explain a little bit, what a web client is. Then we'll have a look at the different functionality available, and then we'll do a little bit of a deep dive into the analytical tools, and then look at how we can extend the solution as well. And then, as Amanda mentioned, look at the roadmap and what's coming up in the next couple of months. So with that, let's have a look at what is a web client. So I think the first thing to explain is probably the difference between a thick client, and that's what we refer to as the traditional SAP Business One client that's installed on your computer or servers. And then obviously the difference between the web client. So the traditional client, it needs to be installed on every computer that accesses the system or on a remote desktop server. Now there are some key benefits. So it's got the full feature set of Business One, as well as it's ideal for your high transaction users. But then moving over to the web client, which is a browser-based client, so you do not need to install anything on your computer. Just access the browser, whether it's Edge, Firefox, or Chrome, those are the recommended ones, and simply put in the URL and off you go. One other benefit is our cross-platform responsive UI. So that means it works on any computer, whether it's a Windows, a Mac, whether it's a tablet or a mobile device. The responsive UI or user interface will render accordingly. So this is ideal, I suppose, for your mobile executives or managers or people wanting to do, approvals on the road, or even just those remote workers. Now, many organizations are also taking what we call the hybrid approach, having the thick client or the old client for your high transaction roles, and then using the web client for those remote users. Looking at the evolution, this is a screen I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. So this is what we refer to as the thick client or the traditional client. And then moving on with where SAP is going with Business One, focusing on the web client. So today we'll focus specifically on the web client and not on the other one, and focus on what it is, how users will actually work with it. And hopefully by the end of the session, you'll be able to know how to navigate, use things like collaboration with Microsoft, and see how the analytics and extensibility fits in. Now, it's just important to note that the web client is just another presentation layer. So whilst the user interface looks very different, it's still using the same SAP Business One logic and is connecting to all your current data. So let's have a look at the functionality or capabilities from a transactional perspective available in each module. So we would say the web client's probably about 65 to 75% in terms of complete. And when we mean complete, replicating functionality from the traditional client into the web client, hoping that'll be complete by the end of 2026 or early 2027. But over each patch level, they are reducing more and more features, and we can see there's a fair bit of functionality available now in the web client. Things like sales, purchasing, and service, as well as production, are pretty much complete. Just a few things missing under finance, such as fixed assets, and then under inventory, the pick and pack manager. Just one thing to note, and it's important to bear in mind, that add-ons such as Boyum, you can't just copy those configurations and deploy them onto the web client at this stage. Once SAP complete the web clients and the extensibility structure within the web client, this will then allow ISVs such as Boyum to complete their solutions to be compatible with the web client. So with that, let's jump into the web client and have a look around. So this is the new user interface that SAP is driving for SAP Business One. So what we'll see is we've got a number of different groups. So you can group different transactions into different groups. You can create different groups according to your roles or needs, and I'll show you how to do that in a sec. And then we've got the left-hand side menu, which you're all familiar with within Business One today. So just a couple of personalization tips. So you can actually, just drag and drop things. So you can simply just drag income payments, for example, to show in a different section. What we can also do is edit our home page. So I spoke about those groups at the top. You can simply add a group and then group certain transactions or functionality together, or we can simply add. So I can either add to my home page or I can add to a specific group. For example, I wanted to add something into CRM. We go into what we call the app finder, which has a list of absolutely all the available functions in the system. And we can just simply either search or choose. I'm going to search for incoming payments. I want to add incoming payments into my CRM functionality. What we'll see then is that should be added in. I don't see it, but let me quickly do that again. What I'll do is just add another thing like sales quotations. Go back and close. So here we've now got our sales quotations. Now, I just wanted to explain, when I use the word app and list or app and tile, there's two different tiles that you can get. So one is an application, which takes you to actually create data, so do a transaction. So for example, if I click on the create sales order, what that'll do is open the sales order screen for me to actually go and input my data, create a new sales order, etc. Okay. When we refer to a list, it's a list of sales orders. So here we click on that and we can see a full list of all our sales orders. And what we can actually do in this particular screen is we can create different views. So at the top here, I've got all sales orders. I can go to my open sales orders. And what that'll do is it'll filter by me, or I can go and look at, for example, all open sales orders. Okay. If you wanted to save a different list, so you wanted to add, for example, different fields in, let's say I wanted to add, sales employee, I can go and add my sales employee here and then simply save that as a different list view. So once I save it, I can say open sales orders by employee, for example. I can set it as my default view. And if I set public, everyone else in the business will also have access to this view. All right. So let's just get into some of the features and functions. So the first thing I wanted to show you was approvals. So what I'm going to do is go to purchasing, and I'm going to go and create a purchase order. Apologies, I'm having some technical difficulties, so hopefully things don't take too long to load. So let me go in here. I can simply search by a supplier name, or again, I've got the drop down of all my different suppliers. I can filter accordingly. So let me just select that supplier. And let me go put in item. And what we can see here as well is, the intuitiveness of the screen. I can search, by item name within the item number. I don't need to go to a specific field to search that. So what I'm going to do here is make sure this meets my criteria for approval. And let me just add that. Okay, so it's asking me for remarks. I'm just going to say office purchase and say go. So what we'll see then is there's two different ways we can access these approvals. One, we'll get a notification in our system. So here we can see there's a notification here. I can go directly into my approval screen by clicking that notification, or the other option we have is actually to open it via email. So when it's internal, we can get emails sent on every single approval, and those users can simply just click on the link and open up the screen. So that just means we don't have to log into Business One every time we want to approve something. I can simply then go from the screen. I can either approve, I can add the document, I can reject it, or I can actually go into that document, make changes, and send it back to the originator. Okay. Cool. Next thing we're going to have a look at is it's the journal entries. So just to show you how you can create and import journal entries directly from the web client. So I'm going to go create a journal entry. And here it looks, just a lot more modern than the typical screen. And again, I can either enter the information manually, or what I can do is import a journal. So I've prepared this small little import. So you can see I've got my posting date, my GL accounts, and the debit and credit amounts. And I can simply go import from Excel. Now I can either do two different files. So those of you who know DTW, you've got a header file and a lines file, or I can actually just do a lines file, include the data from the header in the lines file, and just say here that it contains header data. Okay. We can also have pre-mapped templates. So if, for example, I selected a pre-mapped template, you'll see all these objects will pre-populate. In my case, I've added some custom data, so it also means you don't have to have your fields in line or to a structured format. So what I can do is just say I want to put this one as the date, that one as the account type, that one as the business partner or GL, my debit and my credit amounts. So now that I've mapped that, I can simply just hit OK, and we'll see that start to import. And we can simply just add that into the system. Oh, okay, unbalanced, so obviously didn't do my job very well. Not an accountant. Cool. All right. Then probably what a lot of people will use this for is sales order processing. So let's go into creating a new sales order. And what we can see here is, again, we can search directly in the customer field. It'll bring up any matches to the text we've put in. And as soon as we click that, we can also see at the top a nice visualization on the credit limit utilization. So we can see where this customer is, if they're halfway. In this case, they've exceeded their credit limit, so you can take an action immediately. Okay. What we can do is edit all the normal information, and again, I can just simply go and put in my item number. I'm going to sell one of these, and I'm just going to say add. And what we'll see here is it's saying I'm missing the delivery date, but I thought it would be good to point this out. No longer are we getting those red error messages at the bottom, a little bit more intuitive, so this users can actually see what's going on. So add my delivery date, and then simply add my document. There's also a couple of different features that we can access directly from a sales order. So at the top, we can either create a new one, we can copy two, so very similar functionality. We can also create payments directly, so we can create down payments, simply close it, cancel it, duplicate it, or we can create an activity directly linked to our sales order. In this case, I'm just going to copy it to a delivery. And here I can simply go and add that delivery. And what I wanted to show here is basically the relationship map feature that we're all familiar with. So that feature is also available on the web client. So if I went to my relationship map, that'll open it up again, just a more modern look and feel. Also get some hints. So it's just saying that this document is now closed. And again, you can drill in directly to those documents. Another really cool feature is the integration to maps. So because it's a web client, you can access maps directly. So anywhere where there's address, you'll see I can simply just click on that icon and it'll open up in Google Maps. So this can just really allow our users to know where they're going or how to plan for transport, etc. That's pretty much from a functionality perspective that I wanted to show from a transactional perspective. Please reach out if there's anything else you want to see. But the next thing I wanted to dive into is our analytics. So within the web client, we do have some powerful analytics. So there's three different types. we've got list views, and list views basically provide flexible analytics allowing you to extract, filter data or any objects within the system, and providing you with enhanced graphical displays such as graphs, charts, or even analytical cards. The next thing we have is our general overview, which you'll see in the middle of the screen. And that just allows us to combine multiple different data sources into a single view. So you can create a card for your open sales orders, a card for your open invoices, all those different cards, and put them in one view so you don't have to go to different reports to look at that data. Then we have our user-defined queries. So all the queries you currently use in SAP Business One are also available now in the web client, and it also has quite an intuitive query designer to help your users write those different queries. And one beauty of the queries within the web client is you can use the list views to actually model the data in the way that you want to see it. And we'll get to a couple of examples of those shortly. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was list views. So I touched on it briefly where we could save a list, etc. But what we can do here is we can say, okay, I'm going to say, I want to put sales employee in here again, right? I also want to group by sales employee. You can create multiple groupings, but what this is going to do is say, okay, here's all my orders by sales employee. I can then as well go to my chart view, okay? And what this is going to give me, the default is record count, but what you could do is change that to any of these different measures that you see here. But in this case, I want to say, okay, my record count by sales employee, and the other I wanted to do was status, so to see what's closed and what's open. And here we've got a line graph or chart, and what I can do here is also go into a bar graph, and you've got the options to play around with multiple different visuals, right? So here we can have it stacked, can also have those, or we can have pie charts, or even heat maps, which makes sense in certain scenarios. Now, just going back to the graph, once we save this view as well, you can hover over it, it'll give you the information, or you can click onto it, go into details, and if you have to open the list view, it will filter just by, sales employee, sales manager, and what is closed. So you can drill in quite easily. Then the next thing that we can do is we can actually create analytical cards. So for example, I wanted to create a card. I'm going to say open, let's just call it open sales orders for now. I wanted to put in a measure, so we want a KPI. What is my KPI? I'm going to say it's a record count. So again, how many are open or how many documents. Then we can go and say, what do we want to see on a y-axis? I'm going to say I want to see, don't want discount, I want record count and document total. And I want that to be by customer. Okay. Once I add that, I can then say finish edit, and I can save it as a tile. And again, just going to repeat what I did. What do I want my measure to be? Again, let's just stick with record count. And where do I want to put it? So I can actually save this card directly into my home screen or into one of those groups that we spoke about. So let me just save it into my home screen. And if I jump back down to home, what we'll see is we've got that analytical card in here, and you can simply drill into it and get access to those different cards that you've created. Okay. So just allowing users to have that information at their fingertips without having to go run multiple different reports to get information. The next thing we have is what we call list views. So way to explain this is I've got a business partner, but I want a list view to see what are their open invoices, or I can have any different scenario, for example. So I can open up a specific business partner. I can then say under my views on the top right, I've got list views. So what I want to do is open up the invoices. So I've got open invoices as a list view. And I'm just going to open that up quickly. Maybe not quickly. Let's give it a second. And maybe while that's opening up, I'll explain how to create a list view. So basically what you can do here is, if I just go back one step, under any of the objects, so for example, I've done it under business partners, I've created a list view, named it open sales invoices, I've given it a link to some of those views that we created previously, and I've made it public so everyone can see it. And what I'm doing here is linking it. So the list view is the customer code on our business partner will link to the customer code on the view. And what that allows it to do is, as soon as you say open linked view, it'll automatically filter our view by that particular customer code. Now you can link multiple different attributes and multiple different views to a specific object. Just further on analytics, let's jump into the general overview. So that's the one we saw where we had multiple different, let's call it cards, on one screen. So here I've got a particular view. Again, I can have multiple different views. So I've got a standard view, and then I've got a last 4 calendar quarters, and I can create my own views. But what we can see here is a lot of information that we can put on a single screen to allow our users to access that. Again, we can drill in so we can see details. We can link, so open it in a different tab to see the actual detail. Or again, we can come and add another view here. So for example, if I wanted to do, let's say, invoices again, let me just call it invoices. And let's say that by customer. So here we can just add a card, for example, and you can have multiple different measures, multiple different dimensions, and that'll now add into the system. And again, you can drill in further into that. So just finish edit, and that will then edit it and save that view within the standard view. All of these as well, you can again save as tiles. So you can save this whole thing as a tile on your home screen so that you can access it quickly as well. All right, let's look at our user-defined queries. So this refers to all the user-defined queries that you have in SAP. I don't have any in my demo database, but what we can do is just go and create one. So I'm going to say open sales orders again. So it's just going to be under the general category. And when I say intuitive, so we can say select start from ORDR. And I'm just going to do that actually. But if you know how to write queries, as soon as you start typing, it will actually start, it should start bringing up those different fields in the database. I don't know why it's not doing it now. But anyway, let's go there. You can also validate the query to make sure it's okay. And you can set the different columns that you want as well. I'm just going to add that. Okay, I have to validate it. And here we can see it's now picked up all the different columns that it's picked up from the query. Now I've got that query in the system. So let's go here. Let's go under general. And let's go and look at the information. And let me just try that again. Okay, but essentially I've got all my orders here. So if I go, I don't know, it's not filtering. Anyway, I suppose the crux of it is that we can simply just, helps if I activate it, my bad. So we can write a query, and again, we can take all that data, view it in the list format, and put it into a graph, a chart, or add different groups again, exactly how we saw on all the other list views. So here, if I go open list view now, that should now run my query. Okay. All right, so that's it from an analytical perspective. The next thing we're going to focus on is our extensibility. So how we can actually extend the solution. So in a couple of different ways that we can extend the solution, we could do field validations. So where you saw that pop-up come up, we can actually put those pop-ups in place. We can also do custom views. So we can move fields and tabs around within the system. For example, you want to move your UDFs into a separate tab within the system. We've also got anchors and links. So what this allows us to do is put a button that simply takes us to a function within the system or to a specific page within a document. And I'll show you a little bit more on that. We've also got buttons. So with buttons, we can either call external services or get information from external systems. And then we've got user-defined values, so very similar to the formatted search concept. And then we've got grids with customized data models, and I'll get into that as well. So let's just go into the system again. So the first pop-up, first one was pop-up. So I've got a pop-up on the sales quotation that if I don't put a customer reference, it's going to pop up and say I need to put in a customer reference for a particular document. So again, just using famous Maxitech. And let's go and add in the printer. And let's say add. So here again, it's going to say, validation failed. We need a customer reference. Once I add in my customer reference, that will now allow me to add that document. Okay. So very similar to things we do with Boyum today, we can achieve that within the web client. The next one was custom views. So again, I've got my user-defined fields tab over here. So these are all the user-defined fields I have in the system, but I've created a section called my UDF section. It's got subsections as well, so you can name those as you please. And here you can see it's broken them down. So first three are in here, and the second two, or I've just got another one in my subsection. Okay. All right. The next thing I wanted to show was anchors and links. So how we can use, I suppose, buttons and different functionalities to navigate to different areas quicker. So in my sales order, let's just quickly go into any sales order. What I've got here is a button saying go to BP. If I select that, what it's going to do is actually open up the specific business partner. Now I know I can do that in standard in the system, but it's just showing the concept of we can use these buttons to navigate to either different transactions or different information that we want to access. The next thing is the button for buttons to retrieve things externally. So I've got a button here called Get Company Information. In this case, it's simply just returning the company information of my company, but you could use these buttons to access e-commerce platforms, any external information that you need. So once I click that, this is probably going to take a few seconds, but what it's come back with, it's received the company information. And you can use these buttons to do different triggers as well. So add that information somewhere into the document, etc. Then I just wanted to get into user-defined values. So that's very similar to the formatted search concept. So if I just go and create a new sales order, what we'll see is our remarks is currently empty. Once I enter a customer into my sales order, I've said to the system, can you populate that with my customer's balance? So again, just getting data from the system. The next one I've got is a filtered list. So I'm just going to go edit user-defined values. Anything that's got a little pencil is where you can add one of these user-defined values. For example, in shipping type, I've added a filtered list. Okay. So if I say none, it'll allow me to select anything from the list. Okay. What I can do, here's the full list of different shipping types. So let's say this month I only want to ship with Australia Post and DHL. I can select these two and say my users can actually only choose from those options. So very helpful if you've got inactive shipping types or anything like that. Then you can set this. You can allow users to choose from other methods as well, or you can untick that and it won't show anything. If I show you what I mean by that, let me go into the shipping type now. Okay, so what I can see here is I've only got the option to choose from Australia Post or DHL. However, I can display all other options. So here you can see if I say that, then I can actually go and choose another one. If I had that ticked off, I would only be able to choose between the filtered lists. Okay, let's just have a look at some of the other extensibility. So the last one is a grid with customized data. So what we can do, for example, is under my business partner, I can add a section that tells me what I've sold to this customer recently. So if I just go into MaxiTech, I've got a section here called Sales Assist, which doesn't exist by default. But for example, if I hit on that, it will then run a query and say, give me the last or the top 5 sold items to this customer. I can then select those and say, I want to create a sales order for that customer. You can use your own logic for any of these extensibilities or customizations, as we can call them, to fit your needs. So that wraps up on the extensibility. Now, I just wanted to go into a couple of the latest innovations that have come out with the latest release. So there's a few things, process maps, which I'll show, sales analysis, which can really dive deeper into the data of a sales analysis. And then there's also the profit and loss, which is currently not available in ANZ yet, but will be coming out in the future releases. Also enhanced Microsoft Teams integration, and then webhooks. So a lot of our customers have integrations to e-commerce platforms and things like that. And we can use webhooks to our advantage there to trigger an event. So if you add an item, it triggers an event and uses the webhook and the service layer to send that up to your e-commerce platform, so for example. So let's go and look at the process maps first. So again, under my groups, I've got process maps. So SAP provide 2 defaults, quote to cash and procure to pay. If I go into quote to cash, what I can see here, this is just the defaults. It's also going to tell me how many documents are in each phase, and those are linked to me. But I can simply go and say, I want to process a sales quotation, and that'll open up that transaction. Okay. If I go back, we can also add, edit, delete, you name it. Say if I want to say duplicate, I can duplicate it, or I can just add a business step to the existing process map. So I'm just going to say an activity, and let's say all sales reps need to create an activity before they create a sales quotation. Let me just go back, sorry. Let me go duplicate. Let me do that again. Activity. And where do I want it? So I want to say I want it right at the beginning. And here we've got that activity now here. So again, just editing the existing process maps. The next thing I wanted to show you in the web client was the recent innovation, the sales analysis. So we now have the sales analysis available within the web client. So in the sales analysis, we can now group data by different things. So for example, I've got my columns grouped by year, quarter, and month, and I'll show you where we can do that. So here we can just go into here, we can choose which columns we want to group by. Then we can say, I want to group by posting date, and how do I want to group? I want to group by year, quarter, month, or day, etc. We've also got the ability to add any of our different fields in. So there's a lot more data coming through to the sales analysis than the standard one in SAP Business One. Then we've also got the option to see who our most profitable customers are and by what items. And if we look at the breakdown, as soon as we click on something, it'll actually drill down into that specific detail on that specific item. We can also then drill directly into documents, item codes, or even customers. So that's quite a nice innovation by SAP on the web client. And that wraps up the sales analysis. So the next one is the profit and loss statement. So while it's not available in ANZ yet, it's just quite a nice feature that they've released into the web client. So it really provides an overview of your balance in all profit and loss accounts and showing the company's performance with enhanced data structuring presented in a hierarchical view. So again, what I was trying to show on the grouping side, you can group by multiple different dimensions, you can group it into different periods and slice and dice the data as you wish. You can also then get a breakdown of the actual transactions on the bottom here. So that's quite handy than running a normal profit and loss. Let me see if that's loaded. Okay. Still not loaded, so I think we'll just jump on to the next. So the next thing is Teams integration. So this is quite exciting. So what we can see is from directly within Teams, I've been able to access a quote that someone shared with me. I can then view, so I can scroll down, for example, and say, I need to review the discount. The customer's not happy with the discount. Let's see what we can do. What I can then go and do is basically look at a report. So I can add a report into Teams as well. So one of those analytical views that we just saw within the web client, we can come and add that into Teams. So here I'm just adding the view. So I just want to see the general overview, give it a name, and then I can add that in. So now without even going into the web client, so one, we don't have to log into SAP. We don't have to log into the web client. We've got all of this information at our fingertips. We can then go and look at, for example, the sales. Say, look, our sales were low last month. Let's go and increase the discount for this customer. And again, without leaving Teams, I can simply go in and edit the sales quotation, update it, and that will feed into SAP Business One. And then simply collaborate with my team members on that. The next really cool feature is the Outlook integration. So not only can we now email through Outlook, but what we can also do is send meeting requests. So if I got an activity, here we can see all the details, the dates, etc. This was for the 20th of November. If I now go into Outlook after saying send meeting request, you can see that's already sent. It's in my diary and it's included anyone that was listed on that activity. So whether it's a customer or internal, and it's also got the business partner address. So while it says business partner address there, you can see once we drill into the details, it's actually the full address. Then last but not least, let's just talk about webhooks. So what I just wanted to show here is basically when we do a particular action in SAP Business One's web client, we can set up webhooks to actually send notifications. So one, we can go and query the data. So we can query the data, get all the data from a particular document, and then we can send that document up to an e-commerce platform. Or for example, we're creating a business partner. Again, we'll get the webhook. So we've updated a business partner. We can then trigger that action to go and send that information up to a third-party platform. Now, these webhooks are available on edit, they're available on add, they're available on delete, as well as any user-defined objects or tables. So you can really use these across the entire platform and streamline those integration processes. So that pretty much wraps up the extensibility part of things. So the next thing we're just going to focus on is the roadmap. So I've showed you some of the stuff that's been delivered within the 2602 release, but some of the other things that will be delivered that haven't been delivered are, again, pick and pack manager, there's fixed assets, there's a lot of enhancement to, again, the Microsoft integration as well as all the extensibility. And again, what they're also trying to do is get all the crystal reports that you've got in SAP Business One into the web client as well. And then if we have a look at what we are planning for the end of the year, so hopefully it'll then be complete. So again, they want to include all the different wizards, so the document generation wizards, so whether that's your purchasing process, service, they're going to complete that. We're also going to, again, as I've said, include fixed assets, and then on the payments or banking side, what we still need to do is bank reconciliation in the payment wizard, as well as bank statement processing, inventory projects, production, material resource planning, so running our MRP, and then from an analytics side, it's just being enhanced, and similarly on the integration and the extensibility.